Hello and welcome back to part 2 of this mini-series where I tell you why the Star Wars sequels are better than you remember. If you haven't seen part 1, then there will be a link somewhere on screen right now, so go watch it first and then come back here. Remember, this is not an attack against Anomaly Inc. I don't have any beef with this guy, I just disagree with his video, and it's honestly the perfect opportunity to actually talk about this issue. Also, this is not me shitting on the prequels or the originals with blind love for the sequels, but rather an attempt to help people understand why some people actually really enjoy these movies. I try to be as unbiased as possible, so yeah, keep all this in mind before you judge me. Also, if you care about me or this channel, then stick around for an important update at the end of the video. If you don't, well then just leave your hate comment and fuck off before I sneeze on you. Anyways, let's get into the video. So we left off last episode when Anomaly was talking about the common sense mistakes of The Last Jedi. So now we're going to start off with him talking about the Rise of Skywalker. And as always, I'll start off with the things I agree with.
The Rise of Skywalker has Palpatine wanting to kill Rey at the beginning of the movie, but by the end of the movie it turns out he needs her alive. Palpatine's loyalists built a Starfleet with Death Star tech that is 10,000 times bigger than the current First Order arsenal. Ghost Luke lifts his X-Wing out of the ground, and it still works after years of submersion. The Starfleet on Exegol not being able to fly up, Rey growling Force lightning into existence, General Hux is a spy, the Force dyad that heals Palpatine and gives him fleet-destroying Force lightning capabilities that can be overpowered by 2 lightsabers, Rey taking the Skywalker name, Finn's I got a feeling bullshit, General Leia's drop dead moment, Lando Calrissian just waiting out in the desert for the past 30 years with no purpose whatsoever, and a whole bunch of other stuff I'm probably forgetting that doesn't make any sense.
Alright, yeah, Palpatine wanting Kylo to kill Rey, but then wanting her to become a Sith later on doesn't really make much sense. It's a weird and incompetent plan that just has him changing his mind, which prevents the audience from relating to his motivations. It's kind of reminiscent of Palpatine in the prequels with his extremely convoluted plans that at times contradict themselves, but that would mean that this is an homage, which it's not, it's just poor writing. The Final Order fleet being 10,000 times bigger than the First Order is just a bit annoying, really. It really seems like an attempt to make the biggest and grandest final battle with a lot of CGI, and this massive spectacle that will distract people from the plot holes. But instead it just exemplifies bad writing, as this kind of forced threat is reminiscent of the DCEU, which is not a positive comparison. Hux's character is completely irrelevant. Yes, Johnson took the direction to put him more in the sidelines, but then Abrams just had to give him something to do, and they made him a spy. This wouldn't have been so bad if he hadn't been shafted so hard. I was kind of into him seeking revenge on Kylo and helping the Resistance, but then they just shoot him and no mention of him ever appears again. This is annoying. Now for the things I disagree with. Luke lifting the X-Wing is a fun moment for fans of the originals, and it shows his growth throughout his life. He wasn't the Jedi Master of our imaginations in The Last Jedi. He was lost. But after his great arc in The Last Jedi, he's a true Jedi Master. Also, fuck off with the whole how does the X-Wing still work? Why does it matter? Rey taking the Skywalker name is cringy, yes, but it finalizes her arc and the theme throughout the movie. Your blood doesn't make you who you are. You make yourself who you are. She chose her path. Finn having the Force was a good touch, and I like how subtle it was. And yeah, it didn't have a major influence, but I liked it. It was a cute touch. Lando waiting in the desert was explained fully in the story, so whether you like it or not, it was all given to you. To be fair, I just liked seeing Lando again, even if it was just the same character as always. Some of these things I didn't mention because I sort of feel indifferent about them. They may annoy me, but I don't care. Or I like them, but I also don't have a proper reasoning. The Rise of Skywalker definitely has more moments of stupidity or just overlooked errors and plot holes than The Last Jedi. So even though some of the things you mentioned here weren't valid, or at least not important, there's still a lot of merit to what you're saying. Now he's going to talk about how the legacy characters were treated, which will be definitely interesting.
In The Last Jedi, General Leia's moment, shall we call it, was extremely uncomfortable, and I'd even go as far as to say disrespectful to the deceased actresses, as well as being executed in an absolute ludicrous manner. The assassination of Luke Skywalker's character and the mistreatment of the actor himself, Mark Hamill, who has been well documented expressing his disdain for the character in the film itself.
Alright, so saying that Leia's scene is disrespectful due to her death is just not true. She was alive when filming it all. If they'd done some weird CGI shit with her in The Rise of Skywalker, then that would have been gross and wrong to do. But no, she was perfectly alive and did shit willingly. Even then, I don't think it's disrespectful to give Leia a moment to shine. Her having the Force was known since Return of the Jedi, and her actually using it, to me, was a great moment. Now yes, it could have been executed a little bit better, it does look a bit awkward, but I still enjoyed it. Giving Leia a moment to shine was well deserved, especially after the somewhat lackluster role she had in The Force Awakens. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I liked it. Now in several past videos and part 1 of this video, I've already gone into quite a bit of detail on why Luke's character and arc in The Last Jedi are amazing. It's filled with nuance, it's respectful to the original character by giving a brand new arc focused around his traits from the original trilogy. The acting is fucking brilliant and definitely one of the best performances in any Star Wars movie. I love Luke's role in this movie more than anything else. Now the more interesting topic to discuss is Mark Hamill's open disdain for the role the character was given. And in some ways, Mark Hamill started the whole hating Luke in this movie trend. However, once he saw the backlash from the fans, he regretted ever having said anything. His opinions weren't an attack at Rian Johnson, it was just him telling us about the dispute between actor and filmmaker, something that happens often during production. But Mark Hamill is an actor, Johnson is a writer and director. In the end, his opinion goes, and there's a reason for that. Hamill acts phenomenally and Johnson writes phenomenally. It's two completely different professions. An architect doesn't tell the engineer how to build a wall, and the engineer doesn't tell the architect how the building should be structured. They can discuss these things, but they're different professions, and they each know best. Mark Hamill has admitted this. He said that in the end it was Johnson's vision, and that it was his job to do his best to accurately bring that vision to life. And he did fucking superb. Don't make such a big deal out of something that happens all the time in filmmaking. It's not a good argument as to why something is bad. Overall, the legacy moments in The Last Jedi were amazing to me. The Force Awakens was all about introducing the new characters and letting them shine in this new trilogy, but this film gave Luke and Leia moments to shine. Them meeting again on Crate was such a beautiful moment that would only be possible because of their legacies. The whole last act is a love letter to Star Wars, and any Star Wars fan who didn't get enjoyment out of it is either not a true Star Wars fan or just too lost in their own bias to see any good in it. It's sad because I truly believe that they had good roles in this movie, and I feel sad that people don't enjoy it more.
The Rise of Skywalker, in its own way, opts to treat the legacy characters with some morsel of respect. Leia's involvement is ridiculous and her death is nonsensical, but at least she maintained her dignity to some extent. I'd say her treatment here was only slightly better than it was in The Last Jedi. Han Solo was given a moment to shine, even though it wasn't actually Han Solo, it was a memory. The film showed him being a loving father, and if nothing else, showed us that he mattered to other characters. That is, except for Lando for some reason. Speaking of Lando, aside from his odd vacation in the desert, he's essentially the same character, just withered and grey, and with all the charisma in the world. Chewbacca was finally shown some respect as well, having actual purpose in this movie, as well as being valued by other characters throughout. Luke Skywalker was finally being portrayed as, well, Luke Skywalker, the wise, optimistic, kind-hearted Jedi Master he likely became after Return of the Jedi.
Leia's parts are certainly weird to me watching, because a lot of the lines just seem to have no purpose within the conversations they'll be having. Like, Rey could be talking about how she needs to go find this holocron or some shit, and Leia will just go use the Force, Rey. Out of nowhere, and it bugs me when watching. But I'd so much rather have her in the movie than not have her. Her death makes sense to me, having Han, Luke, and Leia basically dying in an attempt to help Ben. And yeah, she died for him, and that's kind of beautiful. But at least they treated her parts with respect. Han was good, yes. I liked that part. It showed growth in his character, even if he was just a memory. And at least it showed that Kylo still had loving memories of his father, inducing his realization towards the end. Lando was just Lando. From a writing perspective, he was a bit dull and boring, but respect-wise, he was treated like everyone wanted. His moment at the end leading the army at least put a smile on my face. It wasn't disrespectful. Chewbacca had a good role in this movie, showing he cared and was cared for. I definitely agree, even if his fake-out was weird and unneeded. Yes, Luke was treated well in this movie. He was portrayed as the wise, optimistic, kind-hearted Jedi Master he became after The Last Jedi, not Return of the Jedi. His wisdom and true acknowledgement and understanding of the Force came from his arc in The Last Jedi. He was a good Jedi in Return of the Jedi, but not a master. He was still young, still brash, still impulsive. In The Last Jedi, he finally grew into his legendary status that people had given him. To me, this was the Luke everyone thought he was going to be in The Last Jedi, and it fits so much better in this film. Then he mentions Palpatine, the big boy, and yes, I totally agree. His part in the story is useless and unneeded, and he kind of disregards Return of the Jedi. Good argument. However, one character you didn't mention at all was C-3PO, who in my opinion was given some long overdue time to shine. He was honestly one of my favorite parts of the whole movie. Up until now, he's never had much character and acted as comedy relief, which was fine. He just never resonated with me as a character before this film. Them giving C-3PO the most emotional scene of this film absolutely shows respect of legacy characters.
And as broken as The Last Jedi is, I'm gonna have to say The Rise of Skywalker is worse. The worst Star Wars film ever made.
Alright, now this is his final decision. The Rise of Skywalker is the worst Star Wars movie ever made, which is actually the same opinion as I have. In my opinion, The Rise of Skywalker is the worst Star Wars movie. But then what is my point of defending it in these videos? Well, because it's not a complete shitfest of a movie, and it's definitely not the only contender as the worst Star Wars movie. I think it has a lot more going on thematically, visually, and symbolically than The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. And as a standalone film, it would be better than those two. But it's not. It's the climax of a trilogy, and it does it horrifically. Its disregard and excessive retconning of so many aspects of what made The Last Jedi good, or at least what it is a horrendous choice when making a trilogy. Because now nothing feels connected. It's just 3 movies where some of them are really decent, but don't exemplify a shared story. And I truly believe that some of this is because of The Rise of Skywalker being afraid of the backlash of the fans. And that's the underlying problem. Toxic Star Wars fans having bullied the directors, actors, the writers, anyone who worked on these movies, and even other fans have caused so much hate and malice in the community that creative freedom is being shafted in the place of pleasing the fans. But pleasing the fans is impossible because so many people have vivid imaginations of what Star Wars is, and their bias disregards any new material because it doesn't live up to these imaginations. It's impossible to make a Star Wars movie that would please everyone, and if people aren't being pleased, then they will hate. Now of course, most people aren't like this. No matter if they dislike the sequels, like the prequels, the originals, all of them, they won't be malicious. But the small majority of people who are toxic are the most vocal about it. I'm sorry, I'm starting to get off topic here. I just think that the problems with The Rise of Skywalker are pretty much solely caused by the backlash from the community, and this toxic as hell fandom. And yeah, this movie exemplifies the hateful Star Wars fandom, and in my opinion, is the worst Star Wars movie. We agree on that. Just for different reasons.
The Force Awakens left us with so many open threads to be explored. It was The Last Jedi that killed those threads in favor of one man's attempt to shock the audience, and it left Episode 9 with nothing new.
Yeah, Rian Johnson answered some of the impossible questions that Abrams set up, and it worked well. Rey's nobody because that's the only possible explanation that would be interesting and push her character forward. Snoke's identity is unknown, and that's okay, because him being a major character would have only taken away from Kylo's character. Luke is a grumpy old man, paralyzed from his guilt and remorse of his actions that stemmed from his own fear and impulsiveness. And he's written this way as it's a perfect character analysis of who Luke is. And honestly so much more interesting than a Grandmaster Luke ever would have been. Yes, he closes off some threads, but Rian Johnson still left the whole of the new characters' arcs to be finished in the final installment. But instead, due to backlash, The Rise of Skywalker served as a cluster of retcons and characters returning from death, all in order to please the fans. This is not a problem with Rian Johnson, it's a problem with people's idiotic reactions to his film.
The Last Jedi killed the main villain, the ominous and mysterious leader Snoke. It ruined Luke's character to springboard the character of Rey, and then killed off Luke Skywalker like it was nothing. And after Luke added nothing of value to the film, it killed off Admiral Akbar, introduced new characters with larger roles than the legacy characters and killed them off too, turned Kylo Ren into an absolute moron, killed the mystery behind Rey's parents, made Force Ghosts laughable, ruined space battles and, well, space itself, completely derailed Finn's character and tried to change the lore surrounding the entire saga as to the meaning of balance in the Force.
You're sort of getting derailed here. There are a couple of points that have some merit, such as Finn's character is sort of pointless in this movie. Him learning about child slaves, war is bad, and shit like that is counterintuitive to his character, because he was a child soldier. He should know this. Also, yeah, I guess ghosts have new mechanics now that contradict the originals, but yeah, that's the extent of your arguments. Snoke was never the main villain. Kylo was. And killing off Snoke allowed for a better focus on Kylo and his arc. Snoke wasn't interesting. He could have been, but he wasn't. Luke's character wasn't ruined, and yeah, his death was beautiful as fuck. He finally became one with the Force in front of the twin suns. It's fucking poetic. If you don't get moved by it, then honestly, I'm sorry for you. Alright, now this is kind of hilarious. It killed off Akbar? What the fuck? Why does that matter? No one cares about Akbar other than the meme. He has no character. He has one iconic line, and to be honest, if he had been the character instead of Holdo, it would have been silly and shit. Also, what's this about the new characters being more important than the legacy characters? Well, of course. It's a new trilogy. The new characters are the center of the story. We've already seen the old characters' stories. This is a new story. Like, yeah, Luke is in Revenge of the Sith. He's a legacy character. Should baby Luke have more screen time than Mace Windu or Anakin? No, of course not. This is not a good argument. Also, Rey's parentage is perfect. I don't know what you want from it. Would you honestly have been happy and excited if it was Obi-Wan or Luke or Palpatine? I'm pretty sure the answer is no.
As well as ruining the stakes of Star Wars. Since if characters find themselves in a situation of certain death, you can absolutely count on Disney to bullshit them out of trouble.
Oh, there are no stakes in the sequels, but there are in the originals? Luke chooses death over joining Vader, jumps to his death and survives? What the fuck? This is just a Star Wars thing. People are lucky. People are Mary Sue's. Also, next he goes on about how Kylo's character arc was finished and him being a villain would be dumb, which is why they choose to revive Palpatine, which is just wrong. Kylo had plenty in him to be the main villain of the series. I mean, he was the villain. Palpatine was brought back because people hated these new characters so much that Disney was pressured into just reviving a dead man. Disney didn't kill the Rise of Skywalker, the fans did.
But in addition to that, I distinctly remembered enjoying watching The Rise of Skywalker infinitely more than The Last Jedi. And the reason behind that, and I think that most of us can agree, is that The Rise of Skywalker commits a lot of bad by trying to do a lot of good. It tried to give fans something they could walk away from and be happy with.
Alright, now you've really lost me. The Rise of Skywalker is more enjoyable than The Last Jedi because it actually tries to make a good movie that will please the fans? This is a shit statement. By saying this, you're implying that Rian Johnson made his movie to shit on fans and make them as angry as possible, which is just not correct. Rian Johnson is a longtime Star Wars fan. I truly believe he was making the movie of his childhood. His vision of what excites him as a Star Wars fan, in hopes that it would excite all fans, but it didn't. The Last Jedi is a different style of movie than the rest of Star Wars movies. It's the only one directed by someone who does indie movies instead of blockbusters. It focuses more on writing, cinematography, acting, and dialogue than it does on creating huge spectacles. Just because there are unexpected twists, deep character studies, and controversial moments doesn't mean it's an attack against Star Wars. He made a different movie that he hoped would excite Star Wars fans, but instead people attack him for murdering their franchise. It's just not fair to him.
I've always been an avid believer in the audience not being able to tell the artist what to do, but I firmly believe this doesn't apply to artists taking another man's IP like Star Wars. There's a grey area where fans can express how they feel and dictate the artist to a certain extent, especially when the artist doesn't give a crap about the IP they are appropriating.
Disney owns Star Wars, not George Lucas. Yes, he was the original creator, but he gave Disney all the rights and creative freedom of the series. So your argument is contradictory. Either fans can give their opinions to the artist, or they can't. Which one is it? Just because you don't like the way the Disney movies are, doesn't mean it's not Star Wars. You can criticize them all you want, but then the same can be done with George Lucas. Keep your standards the same or you run the risk of seeming hypocritical. And that was the video. He talks a little bit about each director and their approach to criticism, and then makes his final verdict, which entails that The Rise of Skywalker is the worst Star Wars movie ever made, but The Last Jedi is the most hated. And I agree with both these statements, just for different reasons. The Last Jedi is by no means a bad movie, and anyone who would call this movie an objectively horrible film has no idea or understanding about what filmmaking is. You can love it or hate it, but if you use hypocritical statements and biased arguments to criticize it, then your opinions have no true meaning behind them. From the beginning of this video, Anomaly made it clear that he has an untouched bias and disdain towards the sequels, and that anything Disney related is automatically shit compared to the precious prequels and originals, and that really takes away from any credibility that his arguments may have had. Yeah, maybe The Rise of Skywalker is the worst movie, or The Last Jedi is, but without even consideration of all the Star Wars movies, you can't really back it up. This video isn't a blind appraisal of the sequels, because there is still a lot of shit in them. Rather, it's an attempt to educate people, help people understand another point of view. Us Star Wars fans don't need to hate each other and fight all the time. We could just have civil discussions, but that honestly sometimes just feels impossible. I'm just trying to help people understand why the sequels may not be as bad as they remember. And Anomaly's video was just a good initiator into the discussion. I personally like The Rise of Skywalker the least out of any Star Wars movie, and I think The Last Jedi is one of the best Star Wars movies ever made. But I love them all. I watch every Star Wars movie quite often, and in my eyes, each adds something special to the series. I try to remove as much bias from my videos as possible, but it's hard because I love this franchise so much, and I like talking about things I love. Moral of the story is that sometimes we gotta be a bit more open-minded to truly see the beauty in something. If you from the start say you're going to dislike something, chances are you're going to dislike it. I hope these videos have given you some insight into why people actually do enjoy the Star Wars sequels. and hopefully in the future Star Wars fans can live together in peace. Thank you guys so much for watching this two-parter series. Again, there is no disdain for Anomaly. He's a fantastic YouTuber. I just disagreed with his video. This was more of a personal catharsis for me to just let out my opinions, rather than a critique of him. If you want more Star Wars videos like this, then be sure to leave a like and comment what your favorite Star Wars movie is. Now for the update. So due to some personal reasons, I'm moving back to Denmark on Wednesday for an undecided amount of time. I still have no idea where I'll be staying or whether I'll have good Wi-Fi, so TurfNation might take a hit from this. However, I will still be working on getting content up for you guys. I just don't know how regular it'll be, or when the next upload will be. If you want to keep yourself updated, join my Discord. I'm much more active over there. The link will be in the description and in the comments, so yeah, I hope you all understand. Stay safe from Corona, and I'll see you all later. Peace out.